Hi, I'm Sarah Hill, the CEO and co-founder of Bookstr, and we are here today with author Zach Mercurio. He is the author of The Invisible Leader, Transform Your Life, Work, and Organization with the Power of Authentic Purpose. Zach, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I am excited to have you here. This is a really, really, really cool concept, and actually your whole trajectory is pretty incredible. Can you enlighten us a little bit, first and foremost, maybe tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we can kind of get into the book?
Yeah, well, for me, I research meaning and purpose in life and in work, and I started on that path because honestly, I had a job out of college that I absolutely hated. And it wasn't because of the job itself, it's just I had no sense of purpose. I sort of, when I went through college, I realized, like in reflection, that I did things just to acquire and achieve things, like get the degree, get the job. I sort of faked my way into this advertising job. I was making good money in DC.
Like get the trophy, get
the trophy,
get the ribbon.
Right. And I was doing it for that, and I never really learned to ask why. And I left work one day, and I was sitting in this parking lot outside of DC, and I met this cab driver, and he's the reason why I'm here.
Stop.
Yes, I know. He's the reason why I'm here, and he got out of the cab, and I was just hanging out in this parking lot, taking a break from work, and he asked, how am I doing? And I said, not very well. Is it almost the weekend yet? And it was literally like Tuesday at the time. Side note, it's astounding how many people live for 2/7 of their lives the weekend.
Yeah.
And I was one of those people. And I said, how's it going for you? And he said, amazing. I love it. He said, I get to travel around the nation's capital and talk to new people every half an hour. And
wow.
This guy was so genuinely happy and excited about his work, and he didn't say my life is awesome, I'm a cab driver. He said my life is awesome, I get to talk to people. He understood that why of his work. And it was since then I went back and worked in higher education because I didn't want anybody ever to end up like me. I wanted people to ask why that they were doing what they were doing, and now I get to do that professionally and work with organizations and people to create the environments that elicit a sense of purpose.
Wow, that's so moving. Does the cab driver know?
No. And
you
this
have
is
to find him.
Absolutely. And this is the thing about purpose. Like the most extraordinary people that I meet do very ordinary things with an extraordinary perspective, and it's often rooted in an other-centered, human-centered purpose.
Yeah.
And it emotionally compelled me. I mean, it's literally the reason why I'm sitting in this chair right now as a cab driver in DC. And we all have those moments.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure. Okay, so I just want to tell our audience that we are taking questions live for Zach. If you have questions, put them in the comments, and we have my friend Alana who is combing the comments and then texting them to me, and then I am getting them to Zach, all within a matter of seconds. It's very beautiful. So put your questions down. All right, so back to this interview, Zach. Can you tell me what inspired you to write this book?
Well, I think there's still this misconception that we're primarily, like as people, motivated by acquiring and achieving things. So things like, let's get the degree, get the job, get the salary. We motivate people in organizations, leaders by perks, things that they get.
Why?
Right. Why? And I
Why
think it's
do we
this
do that?
exactly.
But we all do that.
We all do it. And so
I do that. I'm like, I don't get to get
Exactly.
my morning tea until I've looked at my inbox.
Yes.
Or like whatever.
And the precise problem with being motivated by results is the fact that you will achieve them, and you can. And then what?
Yeah, you have to make another one.
You have to make another one.
And in theory, it gets better every time, right?
Right. And you scramble and making another one, and then you make another one. But then what? And you follow that, like, then what to its very end. When I'm working with people and just reflecting on myself, there's often this emptiness. And that emptiness is what this idea of purpose and meaning fills. That when we just are motivated by results, it only takes us so far. And so the idea of the invisible leader is that the best leaders of our lives and our organizations are not things, they're not results, they're not other people, but they're actually a common, like, other-centered purpose. Like, what does your work do for other people? Of what use are you to the world? And when you can identify that other-centered purpose in just everyday moments, it sort of pulls you forever, whereas results just kind of push you for the short term.
Yeah, that's so true.
And that invisible leader, that's what it is. It's that the best leader of our lives and organizations and movements and society aren't really people. It's a higher ambition, a higher reason for being that benefits others and is useful to others.
So when I first saw this, I was like, the invisible leader, like this is a person. But you're saying the invisible leader is the thing within you that, can you help me with it?
Yeah,
Can you
absolutely.
help me explain it? Like,
yeah,
you
so,
just did it, but I need a little bit more.
No, the invisible leader is the common purpose. And what I mean by that is that it's more important than a person. It's the common reason for being. You know, I live in Colorado, and a story that you may have seen is from the University of Colorado 1990 championship team, and they're in my book. And 2 years prior to them winning the championship, their football team, they had, the same players, the same coaches as they did when they won the championship. Nothing really changed. They were sort of mediocre.
Okay.
During that 1989 season, one of their star quarterbacks started showing up like invisible distress, and he was later diagnosed with stage 4 stomach cancer.
Oh, no.
And it was horrible. But this team, they rallied around this idea of playing for Sal. Now, like traditional leadership motivation theories don't really account for what happened. People can't explain it. The coaches say, all of a sudden the bus drove itself.
Oh my God.
The team created this fusion together because they had this other-centered reason, of playing for Sal. And, research finds that when we have that reason, when we play for something bigger than us, ourselves, whether it's in life or work, that we literally release more dopamine. And so we feel better and we perform better.
Yeah.
And in 2 years, that's what happened. They ended up winning a national championship. Sadly, Sal had passed away, but the idea of Sal had lived on and was more powerful of a leader than any coach, than any senior player. But that idea of playing for Sal was the invisible leader. They would go to the center of the field and point up. And I know that's an extreme example, but we have invisible leaders in all of our organizations in our lives. It's that other-centered, bigger reason for being. And there's ways that we can learn to discover it.
Yeah. So, what's another example of an invisible leader? Besides, obviously, a religion or something like that.
Sure. So I'll give you an example. I do research with janitors.
Okay.
And people who are doing regular everyday work.
Yeah.
And in one of my first interviews, I sat down with a janitor, and she had been cleaning dormitories at a university for 25 years, right?
Rough job.
She worked herself up to retirement. She had come out of retirement to do it again.
What?
Yeah, and so I see on this HR file, and this is one of my first interviews as a PhD student, and I asked her, being a good interviewer, I said, why? Why would you do that? And she said, I couldn't stand the thought of those students not having a parent figure away from home.
Oh my God.
Right? So I'm
amazing.
sitting there, again, ordinary people, we're doing ordinary things with an extraordinary perspective. The reason why I'm sitting next to you is this interview with this woman who is able to craft her everyday work as being human-centered. I mean, she brought the human being that's really, there's a human being at the end of everything we do as people.
Yeah.
Every time we put an input into the system or do anything in our companies, there is a human being. There's someone who we're fulfilling a desire, a need. I mean, what you all do.
Yeah.
People find escape in books. I mean, that is your purpose.
Totally.
That's the reason for being. And she was able to craft her work, even the most mundane parts of her job, by keeping that human being at the center of the narrative. And so that being a parent figure was the invisible leader of her life, and it was such a powerful psychological force that it literally pulled her out of retirement to do a job that society relegates as dirty again.
Wow. So how can someone discover what that is for themselves? How do you know? One time when I started reading about your book and started it, I remember one time I had a friend say, Sarah, you're so lucky because you know your purpose. I did not know my purpose. I was a lost college student, but I did know that I loved writing and was really passionate about
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And I've always just followed that passion wherever it changes and, all that. How can somebody get in touch with what their purpose is or what their invisible, leader is, what will motivate them to live kind of a more fruitful life?
I think my first piece of advice,
Yeah.
and it's pretty well researched, is that we have to stop trying to find our purpose.
Yeah.
Like it's some magic unicorn out there that if
Yeah.
we find it, like all of a sudden we'll everything
Yeah.
will click. Because when you're looking for something out there, you forget about where you are right here. And I always say that if you don't learn to cultivate a purposeful mindset and believe that you matter where you are right now, then you won't be able to cultivate and discover purpose where you want to be.
Totally, absolutely.
And
That's so
yeah.
challenging, though. It sounds so easy when you say it.
Yeah, well, it's hard.
So challenging, yeah.
I'm glad you said that it's hard because it is hard work, and it takes any habit. Living purposefully, working purposefully is a habit, and one of those ways that you can do it is just take a minute at the beginning of a day, and as you're getting stressed, just reflect on why your job exists apart from what you do, how you do it, or what you get for what you do. So like thinking about that human being that's inevitably at the end of that supplier service chain that you have created or working as part of. Bringing that human being into your everyday awareness, consciousness, and narrative can not only help you feel better about the work, but it also has been shown to help you feel better about yourself, that like you have significance. I think one of the biggest barriers to working and living purposely is this: we've been socialized to believe that we don't matter, that we're just parts in this market, our organizations. But everything we do, like the cab driver, like the janitor, deeply matters in the world.
Yeah.
And we can learn to think like that.
It's so amazing, and I love hearing something like that because I think it's so, like you're saying, it's so easy to get caught up in like, I don't matter. Like there's a million of me. There's a billion, there's a ton. And like, how are we different? We're all doing this. We're all spending our time in the same way, or similar ways, or buying similar things.
Yep.
Like, that's so sad when you think about that, right?
Just 13% of the world's population. Now this comes out every year, and I don't know if I'm like disturbed by it. 13% of the world's population, according to the Gallup organization, self-reports that they don't have pride or enthusiasm about what they do every day.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah, it's a fun statistic to like tweet about, but we got to really think about like these are human beings that go home. They have friends, they have families, and they're spending 40 to 50% of their waking lives not in touch with this feeling of mattering. And that's sort of one of the missions I'm on, is to help people like really deeply believe that they matter, they have significance in what they're doing, and they can learn to bring that mattering and the human being that they impact into their everyday.
Wow.
Through purpose.
It's awesome. It's really inspiring. Okay, we've got a lot of questions coming in here.
Cool.
First we have Jean-Ann DeGarmo. She says, hello, watching from Upper Michigan. Hi.
Hey.
Your book sounds tremendous. I will definitely look for it. It's a very important insight. It's great.
Good.
Alana says, you have to find that cab driver.
I know.
And she says, how do you find purpose? So you touched to it a bit, and you said don't find it, just kind of work on being.
Yeah.
But we're so used to finding things I am so used to finding things, like finding what motivates me, right?
Yeah.
Like I've got to find that to get me out of bed and to keep me going, to keep me hustling, right? And you're saying what to that?
Yeah. So I'm saying that if you can cultivate, so there's the hustle, right?
Right.
There's the result you're trying to achieve.
Yeah.
And oftentimes when we focus on that result, we can focus on our solutions.
Yeah.
Like what you're doing as a business or your
Yeah.
products or the work that you're doing, and one of the big shifts is not focusing on the solution as much as focusing on the human problem that you exist to solve.
Oh, got it.
So like I work with nonprofits.
Light bulb.
And I was with some nonprofit directors doing amazing things, right? Like ending sexual assault, advocating for children who are in the court system. And I had 12 executive directors around, and I said, what's the biggest problem your organization faces? Well, what do you think they said? Money, 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 money,
yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
The problem is that money's not a problem. It's one solution to solve this world problem that you exist to solve.
Yeah.
And that narrative around solutions doesn't emotionally compel people into your movement. It doesn't emotionally compel you. And so really thinking about, one of the things you could do is, I have people do is keep like a journal for 7 days, right? And at the end of each night, take 5 minutes. And I know it's hard to do stuff every day for 5 minutes, the same thing, but take
I
five.
think you could do it.
You can do it.
I think you guys out there can do it.
You can do it. But you just take 5 minutes and write 3 lists. The first is what you love doing that day. And like, I don't care what it is. If it's talking to a friend, if it's like going on a run, write it down. The second list is what you cared about. So like what bothered you in the news, what bothered you in your community, and write them down. And then the third is writing down what you were good at. People have a difficult time with this one.
Every day?
Every day,
Like,
just 3 lists, 5 minutes. What were you good at? Like, what were you good at? Like, I was really good at this meeting or having this conversation, right? What happens is at the intersection of those, you combine the themes of talent, your talents, and you'll have 21 lists by the end of the week. You combine your themes of contribution, and then you have that theme of really what you're passionate about, your passions, what you love doing. And usually at the intersection of those, if you can tie it to a world problem, that's your purpose.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
I call it like the purpose journal.
It's very, very cool.
And and especially do it when you're lost. Like write down what you were good at that day. Because even on our worst days, we've definitely made an impact because it's just basic scientific fact that you can't not matter. And then second is you did something you were good at and that you felt good about. We just don't like to bring those things to our awareness.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay, so we have Ruth. She says, hi, I'm here in Florida. Hi, Ruth.
Hey, Ruth.
All right, how do you think technology impacts our ability to find our invisible leader?
Oh, I love that question.
Good question.
Thanks, Ruth. I'm going to bring this back because some people ask me, like, Zach, is purpose like a millennial thing?
Yeah.
All the time. And one of the things with millennials that people have said, the technology, it creates a self-absorbed person.
Yeah.
I think that the opposite is true, actually. I think our ability to be connected with, we've grown up, like I'm a millennial. I've grown up with people's stories from around the world in the palm of my hand.
Yeah.
And I think that what that does, it actually creates a sense of empathy that we want to do something about it. And when we can't find an avenue to do something about what we're seeing through the interconnectivity that technology has afforded, we can tend to be frustrated and like existentially frustrated. And so I actually think that technology can be a tool to cultivate empathy, which ultimately empathy is the engine of purpose, right? Because purpose is defined as the reason for which something is done. And we'd really have no reason at all if there was no people, if we were just sitting in a field somewhere by ourselves.
Yeah.
And so that empathy, focusing on other people, their problems, their stories, cultivating curiosity is ultimately the driver of purpose. And I think that we can use technology in such a way to do that.
That's great.
To cultivate empathy.
We have, technology tends to remove the human aspect to a lot of the things that we do in our everyday lives. Would you agree or disagree with that?
It depends on how you define a human being. We can now virtually bring people into our spaces.
Yeah? Like right now.
Yeah, like I'm here. Like technology is giving me the opportunity to talk to people right now. And maybe one person will do that purpose journaling thing.
Right. Hey, even one person, right? It's still worth it.
So worth it.
Yeah.
Even if someone thinks differently about something. So I think that we should use technology to be more human. Especially organizations. I work with companies a lot and people who are on the front line, low engagement, low morale. And one of the things I do is I hang around their meetings and I watch how they structure meetings. And it's like update fests, right? Update, maybe some sort of creative thing at the end when you don't have time and then they leave. And one thing I have them do is why don't just every time during the meeting for 5 minutes you have someone who whose life was made better by your product or service come in and talk about it.
Oh, wow, that's such a good
Via video, right?
Yeah.
And what's cool about that is research finds that just 5 minutes, like with the beneficiary of your work, can incite almost 4 times the motivation and engagement. There's been a lot of study on that, just 5 minutes. And so anytime if you're a student thinking about the human being that's at the end of the subject you're studying, the class you don't like, if you're work from home, if you're an entrepreneur, thinking about bringing in the human being more into the everyday narrative. So I think technology can be used as a tool for that.
Okay, that's a great answer. We have a question from Francesca. She says, I've heard things like traveling, volunteering, quitting a bad job, etc. Helps you find a place in the world. So does this search for your purpose ever end, or should we not be satisfied with just one purpose?
That's a good question, because I think that oftentimes we go and we seek these immersive experiences, which are incredibly powerful. But why are we seeking them? And I think those are just, again, things to do and achieve. I think that people are seeking those experiences because there's this deep craving for meaning and connection to other people at the end of the day. When I talk to people who travel, they most of the time tell me about the people they connect with, the different people. Like understanding stories or the conversations they have. So I think we're craving to be sort of a part of other people's stories. But I think that whether you're traveling or staying here, I think it's still about cultivating a purposeful mindset where you are. Oftentimes I teach at a college as well, and there's this if-then argument that's used. Like, if I get a degree, then I'll be able to make a difference. If I do this, then I'll be able to do that. And we miss out on what we do right now and who we are and what our impact is. And I think that those purpose themes of like passion and contribution and your ultimate impact, I think those exist where you are, and you can start uncovering those, whether you're traveling or not. But volunteering, yes, it gives you that other-centeredness that's key to purpose.
Cool.
There was a lot in that question.
No, it's great. It's amazing. All right, so you're an established international speaker and trainer. I don't know if you guys know this, but our researchers found this. Can you first tell us about what you do and how you came to this point? So we've kind of spoken quite a bit about who you are and the taxi driver. But how did you switch gears after school? You went back to teach, and then how did you find this niche for like speaking to companies and speaking to people and then writing a book?
So here's what's funny is and this is why it's not like what you do necessarily, but why you do it, because I majored in journalism. Then I got there you go, Then I got a master's in higher education administration. Then now I'm getting a doctorate in organizational learning, performance, and change, right? Wow. But the constant has been this, I feel this deep like yearning from people for meaning and purpose. Like it really makes me like upset to see that 13% of the world likes what they're doing for 40 to 50% of their waking lives. And I have a toddler, a 2.5-year-old, and he's always asking, if you're a parent out there, that when you have a toddler, they start asking why as soon as they learn.
Really?
Oh yeah, why? I was preparing for this trip, and he was like, Daddy, what are you doing? I said, working. And he said, why? And then I was like, well, I think people will like what I have to say. And then he said, why? And I realized like that question's annoying because we have to explain ourselves. Like we have to justify what we're spending our existence on.
Oh my God.
And that's why I think from when we're toddlers, we are wired to ask why. And some of our systems have been created in such a way that they don't leverage that search for meaning. We're kind of taught to temper that. And so I worked in higher education because that was a great place to do that, because I could get students to start thinking about why. And gosh, if somebody had just told me that I mattered, like that what I did right now mattered, even though I didn't have a degree. Like things could have looked a lot differently. I could have had the tools to, ask why in that career. And so now I'm trying to really help people change systems so that organizations that employ most of the people on this planet create environments that leverage that inherent craving for meaning and purpose so that people can connect to other human beings and solve human problems through their work and feel better about doing it. I think Mark Zuckerberg said in his commencement address to Harvard last year,
It was awesome.
like that he imagines a world in which everybody has a sense of purpose.
Wow.
And I agree.
Yeah.
No matter your socioeconomic status, your job, purpose is a universal human need. And that's sort of the mission I'm on. It just happens to be, it's been in education, it's been in companies, and it's been through speaking. Those are the delivery mechanisms of that purpose.
Amazing. Very, very, very amazing. Okay, so at what point did you decide, this is a great question. We have a few questions here.
Cool.
Is there a book that inspired you? This is from Hillary.
Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl.
Oh.
And Viktor Frankl was a concentration camp prisoner.
Wow.
And he was simultaneously a psychiatrist by trade. And what he did when he was in the camp is he looked at who were the concentration camp survivors, how were they surviving and thriving. And what he found was that people who had a meaning to life that existed outside the camp and they focused on it actually were more resilient. And himself, he was more resilient. There's a picture in the book, not a picture, but he paints a picture with his words where he's walking out and his, he has no shoes on, it's cold in the winter, going out to work. And he was able to find meaning in that awful experience by attaching it to getting back to his wife.
Wow.
And he spent his whole life after the concentration camp dedicating himself to this thing called logotherapy, which is that you can actually counsel people who have mental illnesses by helping them first find meaning in their life.
Wow.
And he's like foundational. And I have sophomore students in college read this book because he was in the most deplorable, hellish conditions a human being can be in. And he was able to awaken meaning and purpose in it.
That's amazing.
So when you're stressed out, like as in your work or
Me, no.
not you,
No,
but
I'm
like
kidding.
when
I
one
get stressed every
is
day.
stressed out, or like my students are like, I'm so busy.
Yeah.
When you can attach that to a meaning and a purpose that's bigger than you, it can pull you through that.
Yeah.
So I would really recommend that book as well. And Simon Sinek's Start With Why. I mean, I think we've all probably heard of that. It's sort of an international bestseller. He really brought, I think, the purpose movement to the mainstream. And I think what I'm trying to do is really pick up where like a Simon Sinek and Start With Why leaves off and help people learn how to cultivate the mindset necessary to start with why.
It's incredible. Yeah. We have a question from Chris here. It says, any tips for young people starting college and how to think about their purpose before they start?
Yes. This is like, everybody asks in college, like, what should I do with my life?
That's their next book.
Yeah.
Before college.
Right. Like, I know, what should I do with my life? And I think it's one powerful thing is reframing that question and thinking, what should my life do for others? All of us.
That's so amazing.
It is
That's so important.
I know.
That
switch is so powerful because if you go into like a career counselor's office or your academic advisor's office or you're choosing a major and you say, instead of what I want to do with my life, what should my life do for others? You tap into those themes of what's your contribution? Purpose asks us of what use are we to the world. And it's ironic that happiness, like success, comes as a byproduct of serving something bigger than yourself. The psychological research has really been clear since the 50s on that. And so I would really encourage you to ask that question. And as you're exploring opportunities, ask how this can help me deliver that usefulness, to others.
So beautiful. Okay, we have Francesca says, what is one thing someone could do day to day to live for the purpose in the present?
Yeah, some people ask me after talks and things, what's the meaning of life?
Oh, can you answer that? Do you have an idea?
Yeah, and I don't think there's any one meaning of life. I think there are meanings of life, your life, and I think those meanings, plural, are held by the innumerable people you impact every day.
Wow.
And like your meanings, the meanings of your life in every moment are held within other people. So one of the best things is asking other people.
Yeah.
Like, how has this my work impacted you? Like, oftentimes,
What if it's not good?
right. Well, here's the shadow side of this idea of mattering. It's just like from a basic systems thinking perspective. Like I had said, we can't not matter. There's also a negative component of that.
Yeah.
But it also helps to breed sort of this responsibility to that as well.
Totally.
So I think one thing that you could do every day is just try to talk to people about whatever it is that you're doing and how it impacts them. And if you're, especially in a work setting, like there are customers that literally probably use your product or service, for example, in your company or your service as a nonprofit, and it makes their life better.
Yeah.
Asking those questions. I think also stating your purpose and keeping it visible is very powerful. Research has found that when we write something down, we're 20% more likely to achieve this, but we normally do this with motivation hacks and goal setting and all of that stuff that's out there. And I'm like, what if we did that about purpose?
Yeah.
What do you exist to do? I exist to do what for people. Write it down. Outside of what you do or what you get for what you do on any given day, why do you do it? And as you write that down, keep it visible. It can really serve as an anchor that's actually psychologically more powerful than a goal.
Nice.
Yeah.
I love that. So we have 2 more questions and then we'll start to wrap up.
Cool.
Alana says, on the journey to finding your invisible leader, do you think it would be beneficial to find purpose in smaller places?
Yes, absolutely. I think finding purpose right now where you are, reflecting on your day and thinking about how what you did that day impacted others is incredibly powerful. I mean, we all have, like I said, meaning to other people. We just label purpose as this thing to achieve and acquire. And that janitor, I research bus drivers, mechanics. It's so cool to talk to people who are doing these ordinary jobs.
Yeah.
And who are able to really view that they're solving a problem.
Of course.
For a person.
There was that show, what was that show with, is it Stephen Rowe?
Mike Rowe. Dirty Jobs.
Dirty Jobs. Yep. It was my favorite show because he taps into the things that make this world run.
Right.
And the people who do it and why they do it. And it's almost always because of they want it to run for the people.
Yeah.
It's this relationship that's so neat.
And the other thing is surround yourself with people who are empathizers.
Yeah.
Surround yourself with curious people who are curious about other people.
Oh, yeah.
Because that curiosity, when you have passionate curiosity, it really leads to this collective compassionate empathy. Mm-hmm. And so become curious about other people's stories. And anything that you do, I don't care how you feel about what you do, you are around people who have lived on this planet for a long time. And there are some powerful stories there that you could uncover your purpose sitting next to you in a coffee shop.
Yeah. What about for, and we have one more question I'm going to throw one in. What about for introverts? What if it's hard for people? What if it's really difficult for them to get out and do anything for other people and they, what do they do? How are they?
I think I was 30 out of 30 on the I scale, on the MBTI,
okay,
introvert. So I'm an introvert.
Oh, wow.
I think introverts have an advantage.
Okay.
The introvert advantage with purpose. And it's the advantage of reflecting. Because sometimes you can get so wrapped up in just doing the next thing that you don't reflect on why you're doing it. So I capitalized on my introvertedness because I really like hanging out alone a lot and reflecting sometimes.
I have to reflect every day for a long time.
Yeah, and I realized the qualities of that reflection are really powerful with purpose. And asking those questions of what impact did I make today?
Yeah.
And really get past, okay, that may sound a little bit cheesy and idealistic. Get past that and say to yourself, I did something for someone else today. And really understanding those themes of how you're useful to the world is powerful. So I think that reflection is key. And then expressing it, I think it's just important not to try to compare yourself to an extrovert. There's that saying that comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
And oftentimes we try to we try to deliver our purpose like an extrovert, but who we are, that's our gift, that's our use to the world, that's our purpose, you know, and if introvertedness is part of the delivery system of doing that, embrace it.
Cool. David asks, let's see, balancing life and work can be hard these days, especially with the current technology offered. We seem to always be on the go and ready for anything. To be a great and successful leader, is there something we must surrender to?
To be a great and successful leader, is there something we must surrender to?
That is an amazing question. It's beautiful. It's like a poem.
I think that we have to surrender our ego.
Oh, yeah.
To something that's...
It's hard to do.
That's something that's not us.
Yeah.
Like that's something that we're not attached to. You know, one of your producers and I were having a conversation earlier that you know when something's successful and influential when you're not the key mechanism of it anymore.
Yeah, totally.
There's something
like you can
bigger
leave and it
than
will
you.
Still work.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think one of the things is surrendering to a bigger purpose, but then learning to instill purpose in other people.
Totally.
So that, and this is the whole invisible leader thing, so that you don't have to be there.
Yeah.
The invisible leader is the purpose.
Yeah.
Now, you can take that too far and just say, okay, so like work all the time for this big purpose, right? That's the sort of shadow side of purpose.
Yeah.
But I think that if you get the right people who are...
And people have to buy into
really
really
believe, and that belief is critical because the difference between belief and knowledge, like you can know a mission statement and wish it was the weekend. It's really hard to truly believe in an other-centered purpose and hate Mondays, you know? Like, you look at your mission statement and try saying, oh gosh, you know, I look at that, like, you know, NASA, for example, with that NASA janitor story, put a man on the moon, you know, that was their whole thing. Imagine someone being like, oh, Monday, I have to go to work and put a man on the moon today. You know, like it doesn't make psychological sense.
Yeah.
So cultivating that belief in the purpose is really
But they're
important.
actually doing it. Like, I know some people are like, hey, we're putting a man on the moon. And then, like, they don't. And you're like,
right.
oh,
yeah.
We all bought into this.
Yeah, so that belief that's different than knowledge, like instilling that with people, especially if you lead a team or in work or in life, is critical. And I mean, I think families can also do this, and any organization that we're in life. Cultivating purpose is powerful.
Amazing. And do you have any parting thoughts for our viewers? We will, by the way, put a link in the comments to for our viewers to buy The Invisible Leader. And do you have any parting words?
Yeah, I think that, you know, my parting words would be that you do things every day that deeply matter in the world from a systems perspective. Like you are an integral part of this system of the world, and I think that if more people can identify that and believe that right now is important, I think society will be a better place. I think people will feel better about what they do. And ultimately, I think to stop maybe thinking about these like 4 steps to finding purpose stuff and really think about how do I discover where I am? Mm-hmm. And that's what I would leave people with.
And start from there.
Yeah.
It's amazing, Zach. Thank you. Zach Mercurio, where can our audience keep up with you? Do you have a website or Twitter or Facebook? Yeah,
so it's zachmercurio.com. So ZachMercurio.com. And then I'm on Twitter at Zach Mercurio, Instagram at Zach Mercurio, and then on Facebook. It's Zach Mercurio. Yeah, so I'd love to hear from you. And I have a blog called PurposeSpeaks.com. And I write a lot about like just the latest thinking around purpose and meaning, and sometimes even like this idea of like, when is purpose not good? Yeah. And what are some challenges to this idea? And so it's designed to be a community of people who hold people accountable for living purposefully.
Very awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah.
It's been an honor.
For having me. Yeah, absolutely. It's been awesome.
All right, and we will see you guys soon.